Well, today I'm doing a solo episode. Yes, it's just me. And I'm going to be talking about the foundations of a strong property management business. I was in this business for 20 years and I did so many things that I probably wouldn't do again if I was starting over. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. The 10 most important things that you need to know and do. And spoiler alert, this is not about revenue management or marketing or owner acquisition. It's about the real foundations. This is the Vacation Rental Success Podcast, keeping you up to date with news, views, information and resources on this rapidly changing short-term rental business. I'm your host, Heather Bayer, and with 25 years of experience in this industry, I'm making sure you know what's hot, what's not, what's new, and what will help make your business a success. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Vacation Rental Success Podcast. This is your host, Heather Bayer. And if you've watched me on video before, you'll see that we have a little bit of a different backdrop today. It's not a backdrop, it's a really blank wall. And it's because we are redoing the studio entirely. I've got off my high stool, which I've been sitting on for the past 5 years, I think, and I'm now down in my nice comfy chair at a desk, and it's great. And over the next couple of days, we're going to be building out a little bit more of the studio, making it a bit more fun in the background. So you'll have to keep watching to see what's coming next. So in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the foundations of a strong property management business. Because, if I was starting up again now, I would be doing things, I was going to say marginally differently, but no, if I was starting up again today, after 20 years, I would be doing things dramatically differently. I would be working, obviously, from all the knowledge I've gained over 20 years. And I would have that massive benefit of having all that knowledge, of making all those mistakes. And yes, there were a ton of mistakes. So what I want to bring to you today is, maybe you are starting in the business for the first time. Maybe you've been in the business a little while and it's time for a reset, or you just feel the need to reflect back on how you've been doing and make a few changes. And it's never too late. Never, ever too late to make those changes. Because in those 20 years, I've seen the industry evolve just dramatically. When I started out, and I've talked about this in plenty of podcast episodes before, there was no networking. There was no mentorship. There was no help available. I just emigrated to Canada. I was starting a new business in a location that I wasn't that familiar with. I had owned a few properties here in Ontario and I had been renting them out. But now I was trying to convince Canadians, in my best British accent, how they should trust me to manage their properties. And that was challenging to say the least. If I'd known the things that I know now and that I've learned over the last 20 years, I would probably have grown the business a lot quicker. So in this episode, I thought I'd take you through some of the things that can make your journey a bit smoother. So whether you're just starting or looking to refine your approach, all these insights are tailored to help you navigate the current short-term rental landscape and also to look forward a little bit to the future, because it's dynamic, this business, as you know, constantly changing, new stuff coming along, and getting these foundations in place will just be so helpful. So if you've been listening along to the podcasts, if you followed me on LinkedIn, and I'd love you to follow me on LinkedIn, I'll make sure that my LinkedIn profile is in the show notes. You'll know that my business partner and my son, Mike, and myself have been building an education platform. We want to bring this Thrive, we call it Thrive, which stands for Trust, Hospitality and Responsibility in a Vibrant Environment. And it's about instilling these business foundations into every corner of your business. It is for the principals, it's for the reservationists, it's for the housekeeping and maintenance teams. It's for your marketing people and your business development people. It's for everybody who works in your business, giving them this really core instruction on how a property management business really works and the values that underpin everything that you do. And I know that you will no doubt have your core values already in place. And if you don't, you should. You should make that a real priority. But in the course, and it's we have quite an extensive online course that everybody does, and then there is a person within the company called the Thrive Ambassador who helps every member of the team do the course, answers all their questions, and makes sure they're applying the learning into the workplace. But that's something else. We can come back to that at a later time. What I want to say is that the first module of the course is about the history of the industry. I remember going to a HomeAway conference way back, and I think it was maybe 2013. Yeah, maybe around about that time. It was probably just before I started this podcast, or maybe in the first year of the podcast. And I was listening to the keynote address, and it was by an executive of HomeAway. And for those of you who have no clue what HomeAway is or was, HomeAway came before Vrbo. In fact, HomeAway started way back in 1995, I think, and grew very rapidly and acquired all sorts of other platforms, other listing sites, and it became the place. HomeAway was where you went to book your property. It was ultimately acquired by Expedia, and then because HomeAway had already acquired VRBO, Vacation Rental by Owner, and that was such a popular site at the time that Expedia decided it was going to brand VRBO as Vrbo and quietly sunset HomeAway. The reason I tell you that is this is the history of our industry. Actually, the reason I'm talking about that, let's go back a bit. I was at the Vacation Rental Managers Association conference, and this executive from HomeAway was talking about the vacation rental industry. Nobody talked about short-term rentals then, and nobody talked about Airbnb because it really hadn't hit the vacation rental market at that time. But he was talking about vacation rentals and the reach amongst the US population. And at that time, I think it was 2013, he said that only 36% of the US population had heard of the concept of vacation rentals, the concept of staying in somebody else's home as a whole home rental. 36%. And I remember interviewing somebody for my podcast. It was episode 50. In fact, it was my coach, the person who's now my coach and my mentor, Cliff Ravenscraft. He taught me how to do podcasting. But I had him on my show for the 50th episode, and we were talking about marketing, and he had not heard of this style of accommodation. He was a very savvy person, hadn't heard of it. And of course, when you're immersed in something, like we all are, we forget that there are people out there who don't actually know everything that we know. So that was quite a surprise. Anyway, that 36% in 2013 had not heard of vacation rentals. So what happens in 2014 is that Airbnb does come on the scene. It's been percolating for a number of years in the shared home space. But in 2014, it really begins to make an impact. And From then on, everybody who learned about this style of accommodation linked it to Airbnb, which is no wonder that here we are in 2024, and there is a huge amount of people who who thought that the whole business started in 2014 with Airbnb. Why am I talking about this? Because we need to learn the history of the industry. There are so many new people coming into this business who really don't understand that it's been going a long, long time. And that's important to know when you want to talk about things like direct booking. Because before Airbnb, before Vrbo, it was VRBO. It was vacation rental by owner. It was all direct booking. And we just use listing sites to post our properties. So that's why the very first module in our online course is about the history of the industry. Because learning about this just provides such valuable context for your business. Knowing about how Airbnb started and the initial challenges that faced gave me a real much better understanding of market dynamics and the real importance of adapting to change. So knowing how the industry has evolved and the trends that have come and gone and the challenges that have been faced by others can really help you to understand how you play out your strategies, and it will help you to avoid the mistakes that people made in the past. So that's my first foundation. My first lesson really is learn the history of the industry. If you don't know what came before 2014 and Airbnb, or if you really have scant knowledge of what's happened since 2014 in the wider context of this industry, then you need to start doing some research and start doing some learning, because it will inform how you go forward. Okay, that's number one. Number two, and let me just say that these are in no particular order, apart from knowing your history, which I think is the very first thing you need to know. The rest is in no order, and it's really a bit sort of random. It's really random information that I want to share with you, but random, incredibly important information. The second one I've got here is be intentional. Know your niche. When I started, I took on everything and anything. I really didn't care if it was a cabin in the woods with no power, outside facilities, and the roof leaked. Honestly, no, I don't mean that. Of course I cared, but I really wanted anything into my inventory. I didn't really spend a huge amount of time considering what niche I wanted to be in. And considering that my word for 2024 is intention, being intentional, I want to bring that into these foundations, because the first thing I'd do differently, if I was starting again, would be to be more intentional about knowing my niche. It is crucial to specialize, whether it's sustainability or accessibility, it's a luxury or experiential stays. Having this real clear focus helps attract the right guests, because you'll be able to define your avatar and get those people coming to you because you're delivering exactly what they want, and it allows you to streamline your operations. And you have to differentiate if you want a sustainable business, meaning one that's going to grow in a competitive market where you don't have to rely on the OTAs. And that is important. We talk a lot in different circles about, not building your property on somebody else's land, which is what you do if you simply rely on Airbnb or Vrbo or Booking.com. You have to spread your message out much wider than that, and having a niche will help you do that. Some examples, and I'd love you to to take the time to go and have a look at these. And the first one is Rachel Parsons. In fact, all of these people have been on the show, and I will put links to their episodes in the show notes. So Rachel Parsons from New Forest Escapes is very intentional in the sustainability space. And she has a real focus on environmental issues and helping her guests understand about sustainability. The second is Rachel Alday. She's been on the podcast just recently talking about her team culture. Rachel's focus is luxury vacation rentals. It's in the brand Abode Luxury Vacation Rentals. Go take a look at her website and see how that niche focus is so apparent in that brand. The third one, this lady is one of my favourite people in the world, and that's Sue Allen from East Ruston Cottages in Norfolk. Her niche is pets, is being pet friendly, and not just being tolerant for one dog coming. She has some very clear criteria for her owners. She does not charge for pets. She asks her owners to be accepting of a minimum of 2 dogs. Some of her properties allow unlimited dogs. So this is very tightly niched market. There's very few property management companies. In fact, I think Sue's is the only one that is predominantly pet friendly. I mean, for her, it's primarily pet friendly. All her properties accept pets, and go and take a look at her website again. It is really focused on dogs, pets, pet owners, and she's incredibly successful about being intentional. So take that one away. Go and have a look at your brand, what you're currently offering, and decide if you are really being intentional or if that's something that you could move into. So my next one is creating a business plan. This is just primary. It's so important. We didn't create a business plan for the first 17 years of our business. We had goals and we had marketing plans, but nothing that was clearly laid down that we revisited every single year. And now, if I was starting again, it is one of the first things I would do. I want to give you an analogy here because this is one that really resonates with me, because we've all set up a GPS when we head out somewhere. And it might give you several options. You might ask you if you want to avoid construction or major highways. Do you want the longest route, the shortest route, the fastest route? What you choose, though, really depends on your goal. So when we head down to Gulf Shores with the RV for the winter, our goal is simply to get there safely with no hold-ups. And since we are booked in for January the 1st, we want to be there on January the 1st. So everything is geared around that goal. We know it's going to take 4 days of driving and 3 night stops, and everything is booked up in advance. And it does help. My husband is a supreme planner, so it's all meticulously organised and scheduled out. And we also have a plan B and a plan C in case of bad weather or breakdowns or any other kind of hold-ups. Things happen. Weather happens. Construction happens. And we want to make sure that we've got alternatives should something go wrong. This is about emergency planning, which actually is another podcast episode I'm going to be doing. But anyway, we know we've got to book RV sites really well in advance because the mode of travel, the RV travel, has become way too popular since COVID, and there's so many more of these massive rigs on the road using the RV spaces that used to be so easy to come by. So over the years, we've had to change the way we do things because it's no longer as easy to be spontaneous, deciding where we're going to go for that night on the day. You just can't do that anymore unless you're planning on stopping in a Walmart car park. And even then, those are becoming pretty crowded now. So I mention this because it's a great analogy of how our business has changed over the years. when I started out in 2003, we never did much planning because it was pretty easy to get guests. They were happy with just about everything we did, and they were way more tolerant. No one cared about the occasional dust bunny or cared about a few dead bugs in a window frame that got there between the cleaners leaving and the guests arriving. And I remember talking about guest expectations back in in 2005, when I was comparing how guest expectations had changed since 1999, when I was running my own cottages. And we were talking about a few of those things and how guests expected, they expected the place to be clean when they arrived. They expected to be able to access it easily without searching for a key, without going under a deck and finding a key hanging on a hook. Those were the things that were pretty common around that time. But I was writing a post in 2005 talking about guest expectations changing since 1999. I think I wrote another post in 2014, and then I probably wrote another post every year after that about guest expectations changing. Now, if you go on any Facebook group where people are talking about guest expectations, you'll know that the expectations now are, I want to arrive, I want to walk in, I don't want any hold-ups, I want everything to be absolutely pristine, exactly as it was advertised. There is nothing wrong with that. And when I leave, I want to get up in the morning, have a shower, pack my stuff up, and walk out of the door. I pay a cleaning fee. I don't expect to do anything. So just monumental changes over the years. So coming back to business planning, this is essential for success because you check out your business plan every year and make sure that any changes that have happened during the year are reflected in that business plan. You outline your goals, your target market, your financial projections, and your marketing strategies. You think of it as your business's GPS. It guides you through each stage of growth. I mean, as I said, when I started, had no formal plan, and it led to a lot of trial and error. So a well-structured plan helps you stay focused, it measures your progress, and of course it's crucial if you want to secure any financing or investors. And your business plan does not have to be fancy. You don't need to research expensive templates. It's more about having a clear, actionable roadmap than impressive graphics and complex language. It's got to be straightforward and tailored to your needs. I did an additional episode on creating a business plan, and that's in the show notes as well. You're going to find these show notes are quite lengthy for this episode. Lots of things to do after you've finished listening to this. So next two, in fact, are about relationships. The first one is making relationships with people that count. And building those relationships is key. If you start up a business in an area that you're not familiar with, you need to connect with people. You need to connect with people that matter. Connect with the realtors, the insurers, join your local chamber of commerce, join your destination market group if you have one. Networking with these professionals will open doors to new opportunities, and they provide valuable support. I've talked to Tyann Marsink on many occasions about what she does with her companies as Branson Family Retreats and Missouri House, which is a collection of properties in, of course, Missouri. And she has often said that one of the most important things she ever did when she started out was joining her local chamber and becoming active in it. And now she says when people walk into the Branson Chamber of Commerce and they're perhaps thinking about their vacation for next year and they ask about accommodation choices, those people in that office are going to be promoting Branson Family Retreats, Tyann's company, because of the work she's done in making those relationships. When I first started, I met a realtor at a networking event. And that connection led to a steady stream of properties coming my way, because people would buy properties that they wanted to rent out, and this realtor would recommend my company to them. She knew exactly what, because by the time I got halfway through my 20 odd years, I began to be a bit more discretionary about the properties I was choosing. And I would tell her, this is what I'm looking for. Is that if anybody's coming in to buy a property like this, just let me know and send them in my direction. Gave her some of our marketing materials, which she handed out. It was very helpful to her because she didn't really understand the cottage rental market. She knew about selling cottages, but on the rental side, she wasn't that savvy. So she was more than happy to have somebody that she was able to send to. So, making that realtor relationship is probably one of the best things you can do at the very start. So my next one on relationships is about finding a mentor or consultant. And that's about learning from the best. You can't find everything you need to know about this business from Facebook or from LinkedIn. You can find a lot of just arbitrary things that you come across, but putting them into a coherent and structured process, you need to have somebody that's going to help you on the way, somebody you can ask questions of who actually knows what they're talking about because they've been there and they've done that. Because learning from those who have succeeded in the industry can really save you so much time and so much headaches. If I'd had that opportunity to talk to somebody who'd been in the industry a long time when I came into the business, it would have saved masses of mistakes. So you want to seek out mentors or consultants or coaches who can provide you with the right guidance and share their experiences. I once had the opportunity to learn from a seasoned property manager at just one thing at a VRMA conference. And that really changed the way we operated our business from then on. It was just a single contact at a single conference, but it made a huge amount of difference. And it got me thinking, well, gosh, I wish I'd had this person around for a lot more years than that 10 minutes we had over a cup of coffee. His advice was absolutely invaluable. So, how do you find coaches, mentors, consultants? I'm going to be talking about that in a future episode, but be prepared to pay for that. You may find a mentor who is willing to give you all that advice without any remuneration. But there are also some extremely competent and experienced coaches, consultants, etc. that are out there that can deliver the information that you need in a way that will save you 10 times the price that you will pay for them. And as I say, I'm going to be talking about that in a later episode. Next, know your location. And I know you look at what's coming out from AirDNA, and I just saw a post this morning from AirDNA about the 10 upcoming markets, and it's all about feeder cities. I'm going to look into that a little bit more, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes just in case you're interested. But it is a list of the what AirDNA believe are the really upcoming active markets. So I know that people will look at this and think, I shall go and get a property in that place. Well, I'll go to Arizona or Wisconsin or wherever these up-and-coming places are, and I will find a property to buy. But that is not enough. And it's certainly not enough just to get a co-host to look after it for you. You have to understand your location inside and out. It is critical. Research the local attractions, the market demand, the guest preferences. Look at every review you can on local listings to find out what it is that guests are liking. For example, If you're operating in a ski resort, highlight the convenience of your property for ski enthusiasts, the proximity to ski lifts, other available winter sports activities, but also knowing what happens in that area when the snow's not there, because any ski area has activities that draw people out of the ski season. So you need to know what it is that's drawing visitors to that area, because that allows you to tailor your offerings and marketing strategies accordingly. I cannot imagine operating in an area that I didn't know. And I know there's many people who do it, and there's many people who use co-hosts and are very successful, but it just blows me away. I want to be able to talk to guests. I want my team to be able to talk to guests and answer their questions about the location and not just about the properties themselves. So know your location, get going on that research and go visit it, spend time there, go rent a property and spend 2 weeks there, see what you love and what you don't, because that could swing the balance in favor of your company being more successful than others, because you know the location and they may not. So the next one is a no-brainer, really. You've got to understand the regulations and restrictions. Going back to that AirDNA report, I have no idea when I look through those, what regulations and restrictions might be in operation. And don't forget that it's not just state or province or wherever you are in the wider scheme of things that you look at. You come down to local municipalities and townships and HOAs. You're really at that granular level for looking at regulations and restrictions, because that's where the dangers lie. I've heard too many stories of people buying properties in locations that were recommended to them, but they had no idea that they were buying in a community where the HOAs had really, really strong restrictions on rentals. And the realtors either didn't tell them, or they either didn't know, or they just wanted to make the sale. If that question wasn't asked about restrictions and regulations, then these people had gone ahead and just bought the property. Because you've got to ensure you comply with local laws and zoning regulations and licensing permits. I know of people who learned this the really hard way when they got fines for not having proper permits. So you've got to stay updated to any changes in legislation as well. It's not what's already in place, it's what is maybe out there in the future. It's bubbling away at a municipal level. It's being talked about in council meetings. And it could happen in the future. It could happen in 6 months down the line. If you buy a property or start a business, you have with no idea of what's been talked about at the local level, then you could find yourself in trouble. So next is one, I love the SWOT analysis. If you don't know what SWOT is, it's a way of looking at your business by looking at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and threats. It's a strategic planning tool, and it can guide your decision-making, helps you leverage all your strengths, and then it addresses areas that might need improvement. So maybe you feel that your strength is the exceptional customer service you're going to provide. So you'd perhaps focus on that strength to differentiate yourself with the competitors. Just going back to that, when we were talking about knowing your location, you know it better than anybody else, and that differentiates you. And the SWOT analysis also highlights the potential opportunities that might be out there in the market and any threats you need to mitigate. And threats could be things like local construction that is going to impact your business in any way. And of course, I've already done a video on doing a SWOT analysis. You can find the link to that in the show notes as well. So go ahead, take a look at that. So the next one is one I was never any good at because it's all about numbers, but I really do know that tracking the metrics and your key performance indicators, your KPIs, is so essential for measuring how successful you are and helping you to make decisions going forward. But it's things like monitoring occupancy rates, looking at your average daily rates, your ADR, guest satisfaction scores. These, it's the hard numbers that can deliver the information that allows you to make those little adjustments going forward. When I was doing my business, at least up until the last 5 years, we didn't do any form of revenue management. We did a set it and forget it. We had a set it and forget it approach. Set the rates at the start of the season. We had one rate for low season, one rate for high season. And I have to say that we did operate that way until only a few years before we sold. And even then, we weren't spending a huge amount of time on dynamic pricing. It was sort of the market we were in. Owners had a real issue with it. I know that would be quite different now. I sold my business 2 years ago in 2022. I'm quite sure that same business is using dynamic pricing now. They're probably using one of the companies that are out there, whether it's Price Labs or Wheelhouse or Beyond. They will be operating revenue management. At least I hope they are. At least I hope they are now. That is just so important to monitor those things. And if you actually are using some revenue management software and you're working with one of those companies, they're the ones that are going to be helping you with all these metrics. I remember 3-4 years, in fact, it was before COVID, we had a real dip in our bookings in June. And usually by June, we were 96% booked for the summer. Ontario is very much a summer market. It is July, August. I know down south in Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, probably along the Florida panhandle, they talk about the 100 days of crazy, which starts in June and goes through July, August, and into September. We just had July and August in Ontario, but we'd noticed this dip in June, and we were about 66% booked. But we hadn't seen it coming because we hadn't been monitoring it. It was just one day looked at these figures and said, "Oh, we usually booked at this time of year." I mean, now I look back on this and I sort of cringe because that type of metric analysis is so outdated. We probably should have ditched it years before we did, but we were pretty comfortable at the time. But we realized that we had to implement some really targeted marketing campaigns to boost bookings. And one of the things we also did was look into our bounce rate out of the booking page, because that was another metric that we'd never really analyzed. That bounce rate was really high. And we made a little tweak on the booking page, and that changed everything. So knowing your metrics and your key performance indicators is an absolute must today. I was going to say it wasn't so important all those years ago. It probably was, but I didn't have a mentor or a coach or somebody who could help me out until I started going to a lot of conferences and listening to people. And of course, had a whole bunch of really, really bright people on this podcast that helped me out. Somebody once asked me, "Why did you start the podcast?" And I said, I need to know. I need to know more stuff. I need to learn this business inside and out. And not just the perspective of one person. I want to hear from a lot of people. That's why I started the podcast. So it was very selfish. And over the course of time, other people have told me they've quite liked all this stuff that's been helping me, and it's helped them too. So I guess I've done a lot of sharing as well. Anyway, I'm on my final one now, and that is knowing the jargon. Familiarize yourself with the industry jargon. I can't believe how much jargon there is out there now. Terms like OTA. I have to say it was years before I admitted to the fact that I didn't know what OTA meant. Everybody was talking about the OTAs. Oh my gosh, I really don't know what this is. I've been in the business a long time. I'd been in it long enough that I was too scared to show my ignorance, complete ignorance of what OTA meant. And it was just, I was at a conference, I was going down the escalator, and there was two people in front of me, and one turned to the other and said, do you know, I haven't been around here very long, but I keep hearing people talking about OTA. What does it mean? And I got my answer on the way down the escalator. Can you believe that? I think that was perhaps back in 2015. That was really crazy to admit that, actually. So OTA, ADR, we talked about that, average daily rate. Even terms like SEO, search engine optimization. There's so much more, and we commonly use these terms. I happily talk about VRMA or VRMA. And I've had people say, sorry, what's that? Vacation Rental Managers Association. And there's DARM. We talk about DARM as if everybody should know that the Data and Revenue Management Conference is something that everybody knows about. Oh, by the way, the Data and Revenue Management Conference, or the DARM conference, is coming up in December. I will put the information on that in the show notes as well. So you might need to take half a day to check out everything that's in the show notes. So the jargon, understanding these terms can improve your communication with industry professionals, clearly. And it'll enhance your ability to learn from industry resources, because you can go through them then, understanding what's being said without wondering what the heck everybody's talking about. It is honestly like learning a new language, but the more fluent you are in it, the better that you can navigate the industry. Once again, going back to our Thrive online course, we've got a complete glossary of all the jargon that you might come across in this business, and it is lengthy. I remember putting this together and thinking, really? I think I'm down to I think I'm on 3 pages now of jargon. So yeah, it's important to know the language that people use. It just helps when you're out there networking and you don't have to say, excuse me, what does that mean? And then somebody say, it means online travel agency. Didn't you know that? Having said that, nobody would say that anyway, because this industry is full of the kindest, most giving and most welcoming people. So, if you're fairly new, if you're new to this business and you just come across this podcast, this episode as one of your first ones, welcome. You are welcome to the business. You're going to love it. So that just about wraps up this episode on the foundations of building a property management company. I hope these 10 tips provide you with some valuable insights and I think there's a lot of actionable steps in here to start or improve your business. Just don't forget, this business is dynamic. It's ever changing. So staying informed and adaptable is the key. Thank you so much for tuning in for the first time or once again to the Vacation Rental Success Podcast. And until next time, happy hosting and management. It's been a pleasure as ever being with you. If there's anything you'd like to comment on, then join the conversation on the show notes for the episode at vacationrentalformula.com. We'd love to hear from you, and I look forward to being with you again next week.